Right.
Brilliant.
Right. It is Monday. It is lunchtime. It is Live Well Live with Boots Online Doctor. It's great to be here and it's great to have you all join us to talk all about a holistic approach to weight loss that lasts, that really sees you through the long term. We're really talking about a health focus here. Yes, in the context of weight loss, but we're really talking about a health journey. So we're thrilled to be able to support you. My name is Dr. Samantha Weller-Pilley. I am a GP. I have a very holistic approach. I'm also a yoga therapist, a meditation teacher, and an author. I also have training in nutrition, and I am thrilled to be joined as ever by my colleague Ruth, who's going to say hi also.
Hi everyone, I am Ruth Taylor. I am the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor Service and also a registered nurse. For some reason, I feel like my brain has gone into slow-mo. I think I was just reading your comment, Jackie. So congratulations on a beautiful day on Saturday and attending your son's wedding 3.5 stone lighter than you would have done if you'd gone last year. That's amazing. I think you caught my attention with that. So just wanted to say well done to you. I am part of the lifestyle team at the Boots Online Doctor. And just like Sam, absolutely love the holistic approach to everything that we do in health, really, and specifically for weight loss for this webinar today. And we 100% believe that the journey of weight loss needs to be holistic, which is why the webinars run as often as we can possibly have them running for you. And we really feel that this is such an important step in your journeys that we just feel absolutely passionate that this is a priority for us to keep on running. So we hope that you come along and that something really sort of rings a bell with you and that you feel that you can take away some key messages. Today, we're talking all about our thoughts and how they really impact our weight loss journeys and our weight loss beliefs. And we're going to really go into that in a minute. But just to remind anyone who's new or who's not been here before, or just as a reminder that actually the purpose of the webinar is really for us to be providing very broad, holistic advice around this whole weight loss journey. If there are any medication orientated questions which are specific to you as an individual, we'll probably direct you off to your medication provider. And if you have any health queries that are very specific and not generic, that wouldn't be safe for us to answer in a webinar, then again, we'll direct you to your health provider. Obviously, for the purposes of these webinars, it's very general, and we are not safe to be giving very personalised advice. Having said that, if you've brought any sort of health related or weight loss related questions along, please do feel free to pop them into the Q&A box or into the chat box, ideally the Q&A box. And if anything comes up for you in the webinar today that you'd like some more information or to ask a question about, then please don't hesitate to ask. We're very happy to take your questions. So we'll be sharing a few slides. We've got 10 or 11 slides, I think, and then we'll be coming over to your questions in about 20, 25 minutes. And then we'll spend the rest of the time looking at your questions. So over we go. We've got a poll, I think, to share with you, which is the start of the poll. So perhaps we can have a look at that and see if we can find it. There we go. Alrighty. So we run a couple of polls in each webinar just to see where you're at, what's going on with you. It's completely anonymous. No sort of level of judgment going on here. It's really to bring your attention to what's going on for you as much as for us to understand where everybody's at in the audience today. It's a good opportunity for us to understand where you're at, what's going on for you, how you're feeling, what the issues are. And obviously, today we're talking all about the emotional aspect of weight management. So, a lot of these questions are orientated around that and really what you're doing in terms of your self belief, how you're turning up for yourself each day, what you're doing to stay on track, how you're approaching this journey of weight management. We're all different, we're all going to be doing something different. And really, it's just for you to start thinking and for us to know, isn't it, Sam? It's just for
Yeah.
us to really get a sense of perspective.
I think it's just to bring us into this present moment, isn't it? And what the subject of this webinar is all about psychology, which we will move on to. So thank you everybody for filling in the questionnaire, the poll answers. That's really helpful. It gives us an idea of who we're talking to, and hopefully we can direct our information to you a bit more personal, in a more personal way, more relevant way to you. So, shall we move on to the next slide?
Yes, let's do that. Hmm, there we go.
Okay. So we wanted to really address this because it comes up a lot in our webinars. People ask about calories, how many calories should we be having, etc., etc. And we just want to think about this. Calories aren't always very useful. So you could think about, okay, a bowl of sweets and a bowl of broccoli. You could probably have 10 bowls of broccoli for the same calorie count as a small, a small bowl of jelly sweets, for example, because jelly sweets are, pure sugar, pure energy, very fast release. Whereas the broccoli will have energy, so it will have calories, but it will also have lots of fiber, lots of nutrients, there will be some carbohydrate in there as well, but it's all wrapped up in this in the broccoli itself, which has it will have an energy cost to process that food as it goes through your digestive system. So you'll be using energy to break down that broccoli also. So the net amount of calories, let's say the energy, the fuel, is actually going to be so much less with the same, say, weight quantity of broccoli as with jelly sweets, for example. So we really want you to keep this in mind that different foods are processed by the body in different ways. So protein and fiber calories, for example, tend to cause less problems with weight gain than those found in high carbohydrate and highly fatty foods because the body has to work harder to digest those proteins and those that fibrous food. Okay, so that's why the research shows that having more protein and fiber in your diet makes you feel more full. Also, with a little bit of healthy fat in there, because we need healthy fats for our cells to function in the way we want them to optimally. And what happens when you eat more protein and fiber? You feel fuller for longer, and that's just what we want, isn't it? We don't want to have those hunger pangs midway between meals and reduce our snacking as much as possible. And also, we're thinking about how hard our body, our digestive system needs to work to break down those more fibrous foods, those more high protein foods. So we really want to look at those. Okay. Um, but today's talk is all about the psychology of weight loss. That's the psychology, the emotion, and the behavioral aspects of eating, which play a major role in our weight management. And I think all of us will be able to relate to that. And we know that our thoughts influence our behaviors, the way we feel, influences our behavior around food. And we can probably recognize in ourselves, I will put my hand up to this for sure, that stress, emotional eating can really lead to kind of disordered patterns of eating and can really impact our food intake. And finally, our body composition. So that is the within our each of our individual selves, our body composition, maybe our fat mass, maybe our muscle mass, and the balance between those, and also certain health conditions like obesity, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, or low thyroid function can all affect the rate of weight gain and weight loss. So we're just bearing those in mind also. There are multiple factors that feed into our weight loss journey.
Very much so. Sorry, I moved the slide on before you moved on. But anyway, you've covered some of this, but I think there are a few points that would be worth picking up on if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, when we look at this slide, we can think about our emotions, our thoughts and our behaviors interacting together. Okay. And our thoughts drive our decisions and our actions. And if we constantly think negatively or doubt ourselves, we're more likely to engage in those self-sabotaging behaviors that we know impact our waistlines. Conversely, a positive or growth-orientated mindset can lead to more proactive behavior and resilience when we face challenges. So let's look at self-identity, and how we look at ourselves and how that might shape our behavior. Um, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as someone who is unhealthy or really terrible at dieting? We really don't like mentioning the D word. Um, but if you align yourself with either of those thoughts, you can see how you might unconsciously be sabotaging yourself. Okay. shifting your identity to I'm someone that takes care of myself can reinforce healthier choices. For example, instead of saying to yourself, I always mess this up. I always fail when I go on a diet. It always falls apart. How can you change that statement that you might be repeating to yourself on a mantra? Because we all do it, we all can be quite self-defeating. How can you replace it with something more positive and in your own words, something that sounds like your voice, something like, I'm learning to nourish my body in better ways. Things are getting better every day. I can do this, or this is actually easier than I thought it would be. A different thought to put you into that different trajectory. Okay. We know that positive thinking encourages consistency. And we know that weight loss is a long-term journey that requires that consistency. And a positive mindset can really keep us motivated through setbacks. Thoughts like, I'm making progress, even if it is slow, encourage persistence rather than giving up, okay, after a setback. Another thing that we know from psychology is the power of visualization. So visualizing yourself at the point of reaching your goal, like fitting into the clothes that you love more comfortably, having more energy, being able to go for those longer walks or that you engage in those physical activities that you haven't been able to for some time, perhaps because of painful joints. When you visualize yourself, like just taking a few moments just to sit in that space and feel, imagine or remember what it feels like to be in that place. Studies have shown that mentally rehearsing success can actually improve real world performance. So whether that is fitness, nutrition, or weight management, it's a powerful tool to use, and we can all visualize, we can all bring ourselves into that space of succeeding in our ambition. Okay. And we want to overcome our limiting beliefs. These are those beliefs that can really hold us back. And sometimes they're on a mantra, and I catch myself even to this day saying the same things. Things like, oh, I've got such a sweet tooth, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I actually don't compared to like the general population, but I notice myself, and I say it to myself, it is not helpful. For me, it's not helpful for anybody to keep repeating to yourself and telling your subconscious, you have a sweet tooth, you have a sweet tooth, you can't resist whatever, that chocolate bar or whatever it is. So common negative thoughts might be, I have no willpower, I can't stick to a routine. These create those mental barriers. And we need to consciously catch ourselves when we do this. And it takes time. This isn't something that happens overnight. It takes time, but it's so worth it because this is a long-term journey. We're not going to switch everything overnight. It's just impossible. Let's not set ourselves up for failure and disappointment because we can really overwhelm ourselves and make ourselves feel bad. Doesn't help anybody. So we do this gently with ourselves. We always do this with real care because we are building this self-caring model for ourselves. And we're replacing these thoughts that are unhelpful with more empowering beliefs. So I'm in control of my choices. I Things are getting better every day. Things are getting easier. Now I understand my body. I want to love the foods that love me back. These are things that are ways that we can work with our subconscious, we can work with our unconscious minds. And it could be, there are lots of ways to do this. One I like is journaling, is writing things down, is, really taking a few minutes in the day to just bring in some of that positive reinforcement of our thought processes, because we can get really derailed by spiraling negative thoughts about how, changing lifestyle is difficult. It presents challenges for sure. It doesn't have to be difficult if we take things slowly, if we take things step by step and we don't overwhelm ourselves. So I hope this is helpful. So please do tell me in the comments what you're thinking. And we've got some great comments already. Um, but yeah, those are really important things to think about when we think about our psychology. So much of it is our self-talk and what we do to ourselves. And these are habits of a lifetime. So I definitely have a lot of empathy for this kind of negative self-talk that can really derail us when we are determined.
It's really true. And actually, I was just looking through the poll that we ran earlier, and I saw that one of the questions was about are people's self-confidence that they could actually, achieve the goal that they'd set. And only 4% of people who are here today, which is a really low number, in fact, or a really low number of people, believe that they can stay on track, which is amazing. And I think actually that's that whole sort of self-talk. The maybe it's because you've lost weight and regained weight or been on those weight loss journeys where you've cycled round a little bit. But the past is the past, and we can only really change what we're doing now and the future. We can't go back and rewrite the past. We'd all have the benefit of hindsight. If we could do that, it would be amazing to rewrite the past, but we can't. So let's just really focus on the here, the now, and what we can do today, what we can do tomorrow. We really can't plan that much further ahead. We can be prepared, we can set ourselves up for success, but I think it's really important that we just let all of that rubbish from the past go. And actually, science is really helpful. Having these conversations and understanding how we can derail ourselves, like you were saying, Sam, is really important. And I don't think we talk about this openly and honestly. We're all in this world and in this mindset of having to be almost perfect, not actually admitting to frailty or to, that self-sabotage. So self-sabotage is absolutely massive, I think, and none greater area than in the weight loss arena. And self-sabotage really goes very nicely with everything we've already been talking about, but it can really make all of our efforts fail. It can really get in our way and prevent us from achieving our goals. So it is all about mindset. It's all about conscious planning. It's all about being on the page, being present for ourselves. The stories we tell ourselves are the stories that become true. So self-sabotage can be deliberate, it can be unconscious thoughts or feelings or even behaviors that undermine your ability to achieve those weight loss goals. It can be that you are very much behaving out of habit, so that you always have a habit that when you go to the garage, you always buy chocolate, or you always have, I know lots of people who are really focused on weight loss journeys on Monday through to Friday, but hit Friday evening. And it's almost like they're in the weekend off psychology. And the weekend off means that you can eat and drink whatever you like. You can have those glasses of wine, the half a bottle of wine, the bottle of wine, the can of beer, whatever it is your prop, your sort of off switch, your sort of self love. And I think we learn to love ourselves so much with food and drink that we forget that actually those foods, those comfort factors that we've always relied on aren't really serving us. They're actually sabotaging us. So social events like birthdays or unexpected invitations from friends or coffee out with friends when people are all encouraging you to have coffee and cake, how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with your own self-sabotage and the sabotage from others? And it's often external triggers from others that might really be difficult and that make it difficult for us to resist the temptation. It might be difficult for us to sort of like be strong in those social environments where other people expect us to just join in. And I know this for myself, it can be really hard, and you almost feel like you're being difficult or bucking the trend or being awkward because you don't want to have cake or you don't want to eat pizza. You want to actually just have something really healthy because you've learned that those foods make you feel good, that they actually help you achieve your goals. But actually, if everybody that you're hanging out with are doing all the other things, it can be really awkward, can't it? I don't know if anybody else recognizes that. I saw somebody said, the aim of being healthy is real, but actually the sort of ability to follow through is really difficult. So it doesn't always reflect. Yeah. And actually, I want to love the foods that love me back. This is our key phrase, isn't it, Sam? I think it's such
Mm.
an important thing, isn't it? Learning
Yeah.
to love yourself enough to put those foods on your plate more often
Yeah.
than
And recognizing what it is. Like sometimes it's just connecting it. So I think the food and mood diary, if we share that in the chat box
not.
again, we share it every week because it's such a key exercise. Because I think a lot of I'm slightly going off on a tangent here. So many of our behaviors are automatic. We automatically reach for the chocolate digestives or, whatever it is our comfort, the bag of crisps or whatever. that, that we always have done. It's a habit, it's autopilot, and we don't put much thought in. What the food and mood diary can really help us with is just to record it and just to notice, not with judgment, but just to see, oh, you know what? I'm doing like Ruth was saying, I'm doing really well, and do it on weekdays and the weekend and just see what the changes are and where you might be derailing your own best efforts because this is a very personal journey for each of us, and it really is a journey of self-discovery, of really putting yourself first, and making sure that you are strong in yourself, and we do talk about the 80-20 rule. We know we're not robots. We can't suddenly flip a switch and everything changes. We have to look and tackle one thing at a time. And some things might be habits of 50 years, and we're probably not going to change that overnight, but we can look at it. And maybe that's a goal, something that we look at later. Go for the low-hanging fruit first. Like notice, oh, you know what? If I do this food and mood diary and I recognize why am I eating that bag of crisps in the car on the way back from work or whatever it is? Do I really need that? Could I swap that out for something else? Could I have a better lunch so I'm not hungry at that point? Or, what swaps can I make that will make, I don't really need that bag of crisps at all. You know, that this is just an example, but that you will have specific things in your life when you do this diary. I think it is really eye-opening to just notice how you feel. Connect what you're eating to how you feel. Like note down, I was feeling really stressed. I was feeling really sad. I was feeling really angry with so and so because they did something stupid. And then I went for the chocolate bar, or I went for that, you know, thing that I shouldn't have had, the donut, XYZ, your favorite thing, for that comfort. And notice it, not with judgment, but just with, oh, okay, understanding. This has been my mechanism for self-soothing. I've been self-soothing with these foods that really do not love me, but I am going to them for food anyway. I'm in this unrequited love with donuts or whatever it is, and it's not helping me. It's not helping me when I am dedicated to improving my health, making my joints feel better, improving my mood, improving my confidence, all of those amazing things that we often aspire to on a weight loss journey. And your goals will be different, will be personal to you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tegan. That's great. Um, yeah, sorry, tangent
Good.
probably.
There are so many tangents. I think we have lots of tangents in this webinar. It's just such a fascinating subject, and I guess we're really passionate that you really start thinking about you and how you can make this really where you want to be and what's right for you. Um, I wanted to just touch a little bit on restrictive dieting because actually we know that this is something that can really be a hazard and trip people up. And what the research tells us, and actually we know this from talking to hundreds of people as well, is that if you literally overwhelm yourself by being really strict on a diet or really sort of eating restricted numbers of calories or not eating the foods that you enjoy from time to time, it is going to lead you into a cycle of overeating, of emotional eating, of binging, because we know that if we overly restrict, then the flip side of the coin, which is very likely to happen, is you will then start overeating the foods that you've been missing. So there's a really fine line between sort of getting it right, learning to enjoy the foods that really will love you back for the long term, and then putting in a small amount of treat. That's at 20%. So I think on this slide, we also ought to have that 20% rule. The 20% rule is so that you can maybe one meal a week to begin with, just have something that you really, would not consider a healthy food that is actually a real treat for you and with whatever you want, so that actually you don't feel as if you are being restricted so much that you're feeling like you're missing out, that you are, getting fed up, that you can never have something really deliciously, disgustingly, horribly unhealthy, but that you love eating. So it can be in there. It can be in there, absolutely, but just get it into context. Don't make it an everyday thing. Don't make it something that you binge on because You've restricted yourself so hard. Don't make it part of an emotional eating pattern. Really relook at your relationship with food and figure out which foods are serving you, which foods really you need to leave somewhere. There are also trigger foods. One of the questions on the poll was, are there foods that when you eat them, you just can't stop eating them? Are there foods that when you eat them, they make you really hungry so that you overeat? I know there are a couple of foods in my life that if I have them too regularly, they are real trip up foods. They're my trip hazards. We all have them, I think. Some people it's crisps, other people it's biscuits, some people it's delicious bread. We're all different. It tends to be the less healthy food that will do that for us. But actually, what are those foods? And are they foods that you want to just leave out, even as a treat for a little while, until you've got that absolute mindful relationship with that food going forwards? And this is really important. So somebody's logging their food on their mobile app, and that's helping you see your fat, your protein, and your carbs. That's really helpful. And also just making you make more aware. Thanks, Gordon. That's a really great tip because I think it's just also about thinking about your balance in the day and what's going to sort of serve you going forwards. Really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you don't have to do these things forever. So it's not that you're going to be tracking your food for the rest of your life. I think it's just to get that idea of what is on your plate. What did that food give to me? How did it make me feel? Was I hungry again 10 minutes later? Or, did I feel really tired and lethargic an hour later and hangry and I was looking around for another snack? Just making those connections, I think, is really powerful because we start to understand what's going on in our body. That mind-body connection, there is an impact. Our food influences our mood. Our food influences our energy. There are all these nuances that we kind of take for granted because we just, many of us will sort of graze all day or have our meals and graze in between, and we're not really thinking about it. So if we're serious about a weight loss journey, understanding at least a little bit of that relationship between our food and how we feel, our mood, our physically how we feel, we might get a migraine after we've had that donut or whatever, and we've never related the two. We The food and mood diary is really helpful. And, Gordon suggested an app there, and I'm sure there's lots of apps on the market that you could use if that you're more of a technical person. Ours is just a piece of paper, which is equally good. But yeah, it's low-fi, low tech, but it does the job, and it just lets you reflect on the way you're feeling.
Yeah, it's a great idea. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit? I know you're our stress guru here, Sam, so I'm handing this over to you.
Okay, so let's talk about stress. Um, I think we have a whole webinar on stress, so this is just going to be a brief overview. We know that we refer to this concept of stress. It can be caused by many different things. We know that we could be um, emotionally distressed that causes stress. We could be under pressure from our work. We could be overwhelmed with lots of different tasks that we're juggling. Our blood sugar roller coaster can cause our system stress hormonally because it's your body's desperately trying to juggle all these things on the inside. You're not consciously aware, but that is stressing out your body. Physical illness, and of course, if we had a trauma, if we had an injury, that would be causing our body stress also. And we know that high stress levels has been linked to increased binge eating. Um, we we can sort of think about stress being in a state of chronic stress, so long-term stress, is that sense of overwhelm or when the pressures on you constantly exceed your coping ability. Okay, and in that situation, we are more likely to overeat on that sort of long-term scale and engage in emotional eating, which then can lead to fat storage and weight gain. Okay. The afternoon and evening are particularly high risk periods for binge eating behaviors. Okay. We know that stress, I'm not going to tell you, I think we all know what stress is. It can manifest in so many ways in our lives. Um, and I'd even draw attention to things like micro stresses over the day, like your alarm going off first thing in the morning and it being a really obnoxious sound. If you're running late or you're running for the bus or you're having a disagreement, those all count. Okay. Of course, we can think of more long-term stresses like physical illness or mental illness, even. But regardless, stress does have a negative impact on the body um, because when stress is chronic or poorly managed, cortisol levels rise. And cortisol is a hormone released by our adrenal glands. It increases our blood sugar by stimulating the liver to produce glucose from its stores for energy because we are in a fight or flight state. So we're in this primitive state, running away from the tiger, where our body needs that quick energy. Okay, so that's why cortisol has this function. So we release our sugar stores. Uh, the cortisol also inhibits insulin, our hormone that would normally store that sugar. So it results in higher blood sugar, bloodstream levels of sugar. Okay, preparing the body for action. In the short term, this leads to weight gain, particularly around the waist, and actually that yes, particularly around the waist. And over the long term, that elevated sugar can contribute to the development of type 2 diabetes. Um, and there's strong evidence that that cortisol also encourages fat storage around the organs in the abdomen rather than on the hips. And fat accumulation in the abdomen it's called visceral adipose tissue is particularly concerning because it's associated in the research with an increased risk of heart disease and stroke. And of course, stress also impacts other things. It impacts our lifestyle choices. When we're stressed, we often feel tired due to that overactivity of that fight or flight nervous system. So we will perhaps not do as much physical activity because we feel tired. And we might not prioritize healthy cooking or making meals from scratch. And instead, we'll go for fast food or more processed options. Okay. We're just bringing awareness to these issues so we can what we would encourage would be some kind of planning for if you know that high stress times are coming ahead, can we develop strategies to manage them and manage the uh, maybe those nutritional or food props or crutches that we turn to in those times of stress. So could that be that we batch cook and we put a load of those meals in Tupperware into the freezer just for those times when we come home and everything is, we're juggling everything in the world, that evening. Right. Well, I've got something in the freezer. I can just whip that out. I know it was freshly cooked on this date. I can just defrost it and eat it, and I won't be going to a fast food chain for my dinner because I don't want to, because I am still really committed to my health journey. So, just a quick idea there for how we mitigate for these, but that stress has a real impact. As I say, we have a whole webinar on stress. So, I'll stop talking now.
We could be here all day.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, and I think it's just really important that actually awareness is the start of that new journey, isn't it? So if we get that awareness, if we really do some deep dive thinking and really just be kind to ourselves, but actually recognize maybe the areas that aren't working for us so well, then we can have the opportunity of changing our behavior and changing the patterns and really focus on the change. Make that the focus of your intervention. It could be that actually really figuring out how to feel better or how to really undo those learnt behaviors, those trigger foods, for example, or the sort of stress that you're under, how you can really look after yourselves and do some additional self-care is really important. And I think we need to all just become a little bit more aware of our actions so we can bring in a little bit of a layer of accountability. Like Gordon, you were saying you're using the app. I'm sure there are other people who are doing similarly. And actually, what are the props that we can use that can really help us stay on track? Thank you to Sharon for saying that the webinars are making the difference. So it is about whatever, isn't it? It's about finding our thing, the thing that actually, if tuning in weekly is the thing that actually just keeps you going, brings your attention back to what's important to you. It's about all of those things, having conversations with people who care and who this is important to. So we want to reinforce the sort of healthy behaviors, the healthy habits, the mindful eating, all of the things that we do positively can really enhance the positive neuroplasticity, can make us really stronger, building those healthy habits. And we can reframe our negative self-talk. And I think for many of us, it's actually catching those little messages we give ourselves without even being conscious that we're giving them to ourselves. So maybe for many people here today, it's about actually catching ourselves in that act and actually challenging that thought and actually just giving ourselves the opposite view of, oh, actually, I'm working really hard here. I'm doing my best. I'm turning up for myself every day. I really like eating broccoli. I have changed my taste buds, and as much as it's a habit to eat sugar and sweets and biscuits, I actually now prefer having a salad or, random things. But actually, it's just about, I love now having an apple and some almond butter as my snack rather than some jelly babies or whatever it was. We can change, and I think we almost need to re-educate our thought patterns so that our habits will fall into place because the habit can be there even after we've made the change. So it's sort of like the whole thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I've spoken a bit about mindful, basically what I've already mentioned mindful thinking without saying the word mindful. But basically what Ruth has just said and what I was saying earlier, we need to really take back the control because I think a lot of us can feel really out of control with our eating behaviors, with our thoughts, with things just spinning out of control, and therefore we just turn to the treat cupboard and just go for it. But to make ourselves feel better. So, what is so important and probably should be the first point on here is self-compassion, is just really being kind to yourself because this is not about blame. We can so quickly move into berating ourselves, being angry with ourselves, and it's not about that. This is not about that at all. We have learnt these behaviors over years of our lives through whatever we have been through in our lives, and many of us will have been through a lot. Okay, we'll have learnt it from our families, our parents. People do their best, do whatever they can to raise us in the way that they think is the right thing to do. And sometimes they didn't know, they didn't know how to, whatever, build a plate. They didn't know all about protein and about almond butter and celery and broccoli and all of those wonderful things. But that's okay because you can learn a little bit. You can learn to actually train your taste buds to like different things. We can change things. Okay, we can step up and be empowered and be really kind to ourselves as we make the changes. It's questioning when we notice that negative self-talk. For some of us, it will be so often that we're almost having to do it 24/7. It will reduce, okay? It will reduce. Maybe give yourself some time and just think about the ways you could reframe maybe some of the most common things that come up for you, like I'm really rubbish at dieting. I can never stick to a diet. Oh, I've got a sweet tooth. I'm still stuck in that one. But anyway, we are reframing together. We want to create those new patterns, as Ruth said, neuroplasticity, the ability of ourselves, our brains, our incredible brains, to create new pathways that we don't have to be stuck in the same old patterns, the same old behaviors that have led us to a place where we want to make a big change. Okay. Um, I realize we're going to run out of time for your questions, so we
Yeah,
better
yeah, let's
move
fizzle.
forwards. Um,
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of this, haven't we? So is there anything worth?
Yeah, so mindful eating, I think we've covered before, but just when we're eating, just taking the time to actually notice what we're eating. So often, for example, that bag of crisps in the car, you're driving the car, you're really not noticing the taste or the flavor or the texture. You're not savoring those crisps at all. You're probably just putting them in your mouth as a kind of habit that you've got into. This is always what I do when I get in the car and I drive home from work, as an example. So, can we, when we have our meals, or even when if we need to have a snack, actually just have the snack? So, not have the TV on, sit at a table, not be driving the car. Can we actually take the time to notice the flavors, notice the look of the food, to really feel the textures, to really savor the flavors, to really enjoy that food that you have, whether it is, a date and walnut combo, absolutely delicious, lots of interesting textures in there, lots of different complex flavors, and to just really enjoy that rather than sort of, you know, putting a handful in your mouth or what have you, which is such a habit. And I have definitely been guilty of that. So I'm not saying this from a point of view of I'm perfect and you're not. That's absolutely not the impression that Ruth or I want to give. We really want to be with you on this journey and let you know that we have worked with people in the same position as you, and also we have our own personal experience as well. But these things really do help. Sorry, I keep talking. I haven't got much time.
I'm going to whizzle through. We've just got a couple of slides, and then we'll be coming over to your questions. So thank you for putting some of those in the Q&A box already. I just wanted to quickly bring your attention to the hunger scale, and I think this can be helpful. You don't need a scale. It's sort of more about that mental awareness and actually just thinking about hunger and where it's good to sort of think about eating, where we should be stopping. So if you think about a scale and you want to be thinking about when you might start eating, so it goes from 1, 3 to 10. And what we would recommend is that you start eating, this is based on the research. So it's all picked out from research. It's not, we haven't created this hunger scale. It's already in the universe. So the recommendation is that you start eating when you're moderately hungry. You don't wait till you're starving. Because what we know is if you wait till you're starving, you're much more likely to eat a little bit more than you actually need. Whereas if you start eating when you're moderately hungry, so around 2 on that hunger scale, then that can be a really great place. So don't wait till you're starving. And then stop eating when you are comfortably full. So you don't want to go all the way up to 10 where you're feeling absolutely stuffed and uncomfortable. You want to go up to that comfortably full feeling. And for some people who are here today, in fact, maybe many people have experienced this over the course of life, you can actually lose that awareness of when you're really starving hungry and when you're comfortably full and when you're not feeling stuffed, because actually we can become a little bit dysregulated in how we eat and how we listen to our hunger. We can almost turn off those hunger mechanisms. So if you're feeling, oh gosh, I don't know if I can trust myself, it's okay, you're not alone. We know that for some people this can be really challenging. So it's just a question of bringing your attention back and really learning over a course of days or weeks, or for some people, several weeks, maybe going into months. This can take time to really get right, but it can be helpful. So, which is why we're bringing it to you as a thought and something to add into that mindful strategy. It can be a helpful guide. So, just really getting some focus in around really beginning to listen to when you're satisfied. And ideally, if you've eaten the right amount of food, which is difficult to know as well if this is all very new for you, but maybe try using the core meal plan as a mechanism of working out what to eat and what to pop on your plates. That would be really good. So what we want is for you to have your meal and to really have no sense of appetite, no real hunger, no starvation at all for a good 4 or 5 hours. Maybe after 4 or 5 hours, you're getting into that sort of niggling hunger, I'm ready to eat feeling. You're not overwhelmed by this real desire to eat. And if you're finding an hour or two after your food, after a meal, that you're feeling hungry, check in with yourself and just somebody is saying they overeat perhaps, or they eat more because they're hungry or they're tired or they're not sleeping well or they're stressed. So just check in and think, is this tiredness? Would I be better off taking a 10-minute break from whatever I'm doing and getting some fresh air? Am I bored? Maybe I should have a little distraction break instead of a food break. Maybe we need different sort of snacks. It could be a distraction snack or it could be an exercise snack. We can think about different things in different ways. So really try and bring your attention to what it is that's going on for you that's triggering you to eat. I think we've laboured on enough about that. We've got our final poll, and really just our take-home messages for today are really just tuning in to what's going on for you, really thinking, thank you for releasing the poll, Tegan. That's great. And just take a little while. There's only a couple of questions on this poll, so do have a look at it. It, again, is completely anonymous. And really just start identifying what is getting in your way, what your saboteurs are. Maybe start thinking about those mindful eating practices, maybe about tuning into your hunger, triggers and when you're eating and when you're stopping eating, because those are really important to think about as well. And just to share with you our next few webinars, we're changing to Tuesday again next week because goodness me, it's another bank holiday. So we'll be here on Tuesday at 1, not 1 Monday.
Uh,
We
yeah,
can leave the poll up and we can come to the questions anyway, can't we? So let's
yeah. It's a
we.
great question. There's just a great comment there that I wanted to mention from Diksha. I can now tell the difference between when I've had enough food and when my mind is trying to get me to eat more for comfort.
Wow,
And
that's
have,
so true.
which is huge, which is a huge thing. So well done. And it probably took you a bit of time to get there, and that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's absolutely fine. But you kept at it. And she goes on to say, I have to keep reminding myself that if I feel hungry, again, I can eat later. It doesn't have to be all at once. Yeah. And sometimes that isn't a very old program that we're running, and it can come from childhood or maybe if we grew up in a big family, if you didn't eat quick, then you wouldn't get seconds or you wouldn't get enough food because you weren't fast enough, sort of things. As an example, but we have these patterns that sort of we don't recognize until we get to a space where we're like, "Oh, something has to change. This this
Okay,
is
yeah.
this is the time." So
Great.
we're going to
So
move on to the questions. Thanks everyone for all your fabulous comments
a
and
lot of
questions.
people
It
are
is
going to be doing the mindful eating, Sam. That seems to be like the top outcome from today's webinar is mindful eating is way up.
really powerful, really
And
powerful, and
also,
actually lets you enjoy food in a whole different way.
yeah, and letting go of a bit of self-sabotage and working on positive habits. Love all of that. So good luck, everyone, and thank you so much for taking part in the poll.
And come back next week and let us know how you got on. So let's get to your questions. It's much easier for us to see your questions if they're in the Q&A box. So if you can,
There's a great question
put
here,
them
and I
in
think
there.
we can both relate to this. I'm always hungry at night, which makes me eat and eat and eat. And this could relate to anyone, whether they're on a night shift or really hungry because their sleep is dysregulated or they've got a lot of stress going on. So it's more applicable than just if you're on a night shift, but it's very true for night shifts. Do you have any advice for me on what can I be eating? Any thoughts on that, Sam?
I would, before your night, like make sure you have a good meal before you start your night shift. So you've really got some good fiber, good protein, some healthy fats in whatever meal you have, whether you have a dinner or kind of breakfast before you go. If you're always on night shifts, it might be that um, I'm not sure if you have your breakfast in the evening, but anyway, whatever the meal is, really consider how you build that plate because that will set you up. Because the thing is, if you're sort of snacking all the way through, and even if it was all the way through the day, you can imagine your blood sugar just going up and down, up and down, up and down. And when it goes down, it might trigger off that, oh, I'm hungry again, depending on what you had. And I don't know if you're a nurse or not, or work in a hospital, which is what Ruth and I did. And we know there's chocolates and sweets always in the at the nurse's station or in the little office. So it can be that we snack on those things that we know will give us that quick energy and give us a little bit of happiness on a busy night shift or whatever. But then, 10 minutes later, scurrying around looking for more or whatever it might be. So can you set yourself up before you go on your shift? So you have your evening meal and make that a really good, well-balanced meal. You know, reduce so low on the carbohydrates, use the core meal planner, some healthy fats, a little bit of healthy fats, some good fiber and some good protein in there just to set you up so that you're starting at least on a nice even keel. And then really looking at maybe taking your own snacks. If you are in the habit of snacking, take your own and make sure it's not, the box of chocolates. So then you have, you know what, I don't have to completely not have anything on this shift that I'm finding difficult. But maybe you've got those, say, a date with a walnut. If you just split a date, take the seed out, pop a walnut inside, that's a really nice little sweet snack and it's full of fiber, it's there's a sweetness, you've got healthy fats in the walnut, you've got, different phytonutrients in there. So have something, so you have something to keep you going if should you need it. But you also, if you're doing a 12-hour shift, you have to plan for another meal at some point as well. That's a long shift, like maybe one or two small meals as well during the shift. Anything more, Ruth?
No, I think that's great advice. I would just maybe map out your 24 hours and just plan maybe 3 or 4 meals over that 24-hour period based around that core meal plan. And maybe one of those could be a really light and also just really easy to digest foods. So maybe even think about a really well balanced smoothie as one of those, because that could be really filling and really keep you going. And you can use food to make your smoothie. It doesn't have to be a powder based smoothie at all.
Yeah. And also think about your fluids and also your sleep. Because
Mm,
if you're doing that shift work, sleep, if you're not sleeping then in the day, that will be impacting what you want to eat.
yeah, very much so. Somebody is saying, can PCOS that we mentioned in one of the slides affect your weight loss post menopause? I would say, based on what I know of PCOS, is that, in my opinion, I don't know if you'd agree, Sam, but I think yes, it could because PCOS is thought to be linked to insulin, a loss of insulin sensitivity. And one of the key things that we're very keen for everyone to manage to do or to be working towards is to improve their insulin sensitivity. So that would very much make sense. And also, what happens when we go into menopause is for many women, we lose a level of insulin sensitivity as well. So the changes in our hormones can change our insulin sensitivity. So for me, I'd say yes. What do you think, Sam?
I think PCOS doesn't tend to affect us in the same way post-menopause because of
Yeah.
the estrogen, obviously the condition is related to estrogen and post-menopause we have less estrogen circulating. We still have some. Um, but what I would say is come along to the menopause webinar and see if we have some more insights from Rupa, who's going to be there, who's our one of the menopause leads. Um, but yeah, certainly hormones will have an impact on losing weight post-menopause and perimenopause also. But I would also say that the core meal plan that we've shared already is still a really healthy way to look at to having a highly nutritious and delicious diet through menopause and to help you have those building blocks for the hormones that your body still needs to manufacture. So that's what we're looking at when we're thinking about nutrition in these different phases of life.
Great. So somebody's asking how long it takes for your brain to know that you're satisfied and is slow eating the answer. That's a great question. And I would say, yes, slowing down your eating. A lot of people eat very quickly. In fact, they inhale their food. They eat so quickly, then they're not really engaging with eating and chewing. So if that's you, it's really worth slowing your eating down and chewing. We recommend chewing each mouthful maybe 20 or 30 times, which seems quite excessive if you're an inhaler. And I think it takes 20 or 30 minutes for our brain to get the message that we are eating and that we're full. So if you're eating really quickly and consuming that meal in 5 minutes, you're going to be another 30 minutes before you're going to get a sensation of fullness. So that's why slowing down can really help because otherwise there's a real likelihood that you may eat too much simply because you're just eating so fast. Yeah. Somebody's saying that they're eating when they're tired, they eat for energy. Now you're going to have to walk or have a nap. Okay, we like that. Um,
That's
the
great.
napping is be careful. The science is don't nap too much. So maybe a little power nap or something, or a little break or a little change in energy and actually focus on maybe better sleep.
Absolutely. Um, um, can you talk a bit about the fear of change, fear of success, and weight loss? That is a really good question and a big topic. Thank you for bringing that up. Someone's asked about that in the chat box. Um, and I think that is definitely part of psychology. I think we all can have a bit of that if we have been a certain weight or a certain size for a long time, and then suddenly thinking, oh gosh, but if I lose weight, does that mean I'm not the same person? Or I start eating differently, and that means I'm a different person because maybe I'm not baking as much. I definitely had a phase where I used to bake all the time. I definitely was bigger than I am now. And it kind of did change my personality because that's what I was known for. So just an example from my own life. But I knew I had to do that for my own health and that I knew it wasn't good for me to be, baking and then also eating baked goods is not great all day. But, you know, I think that's a really valid point. And if that is something that you feel might be a bit of um you know, a considerable challenge, and you're really noticing, you know what, I'm not sure that I want to change because I feel like it's my part of my identity is being this sort of person, maybe, you know, because sometimes it's a real identity thing, and we talked a bit about identity earlier on in the slides. And I think it's a really valid point, and I'm sure you are not alone thinking about that. Um, because we are talking about maybe some of this is quite radical for some of us present here today. Some of the changes are quite radical. Um, Maybe they're not. And for some people who've been on the journey for a while, I think when you start to see the benefit and see how you feel about stuff, notice that your joints aren't as painful, notice your mood is different, your level of confidence might be different, that sort of thing. That can kind of ease those feelings of being fearful of change. However, if you're still finding that there is fear, then I think exploring that at a deeper level on a one-to-one basis could be more powerful, because there might be something deeper in there that just needs to be processed, that just needs to be recognized and acknowledged, and always with compassion, always knowing that um, these are normal parts of the human experience, and sometimes we just need to ask for help. And that can, you know, that support can be accessed perhaps through your GP or through other avenues. Um, I hope that's helpful. Thank you for sharing that, because it's a really good point.
Yeah. A couple of quick answers here, I think. So somebody is saying they're pre-diabetic and trying to lose weight. So is there anything they can do to monitor blood sugars? We can get a home blood testing kit where you do your blood sugar, so you can check it that way. The other thing you could consider using is a continuous glucose monitor. The research is a little bit mixed around those, but they can be helpful at understanding trends. Their sensitivity is very different to a finger prick. But there are things that you can buy and purchase privately, so have a look and see. But there's a variety of options that are available that could help. And I think the research suggests it can be quite helpful in terms of just managing and understanding how foods are impacting you, and also sleep and stress. So it's really interesting. And somebody's saying that they've been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and trying to find an anti-inflammatory diet. So what we have available on the Boots Online Doctor website is some information around eating a Mediterranean style of diet. And very much that and our core meal plan would be very suitable for you, because it is about eating in a way to reduce inflammation as much as possible. So really bringing in those healthy fats. So Tegan, if you can share the link to those meal plans, again, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Um,
Somebody saying they really struggle, Sam, with the D word mentality and not getting fast results, even though I need to be in it for the long haul. How can I resolve this inner conflict? I think it's decades of brainwashing and just being diagnosed with type 2. Yeah, it's a really great question. Thank you for bringing it up, because I think lots of people will be in that space with you.
yeah. And to really be thinking the D word, oh gosh, it just is so unhelpful, because our culture has kind of co-opted the word to indicate something temporary and faddy and short-lived, and you know, instant results, you know. But the research shows us that we really are looking for steady weight loss, and whether you do that with medication or not, it doesn't matter really. We're still looking for the same result, honestly. We're looking for an average of 1 to 2 pounds a week. That is not dramatic. That's not something that really anyone other than you will notice. And it's going to be a gradual loss over time, because that gives your body, if you lose weight very fast, your body thinks it is starving, because it is a primitive thing. Brilliant, but primitive, primal. We are physiology will think that we are starving, that there's been a famine or something, and we need to conserve all of our energy. It will slow your metabolism right down, so that you're not burning you're burning the minimum amount of energy as possible to keep you alive. You don't really want that when you're trying to lose energy and burn the calories and lose fat tissue. Also, what might start to happen is you start to burn muscle tissue, which you really don't want to lose. Your muscle tissue is so important. It gives you obviously your strength and your mobility, but also it is metabolically active. So we want to be actively looking at growing that muscle tissue if we can, we've just released a load of exercise videos, which we ought to be able to share on the webinar chat, which are gentle, which will just help you increase the movement, maybe add some resistance in there so that your muscle tissues get a bit of activity so that we can grow that muscle tissue. So yes, absolutely that the D word is often really unhelpful. We really try not to use it because we talk about approaches to food and just really looking at nutrition and nourishing the body with our diet. And I know there was a question somewhere, sorry, that I'm going to double up this other question about struggling to eat breakfast and don't get hungry till the mid-afternoon. So for example, if we're missing meals because we're not hungry or it's just the way we are, we don't feel hungry in the morning. I don't think we need to force ourselves to eat in those times. Maybe have something small, just start with a little snack if you want to eat something in the morning. But if you are really not hungry through the day, you don't want to go into that starvation mode. You still need to make sure you get your nutrition. So we don't want anyone, whether you're on medication or not eating, okay, and or being on a very restrictive diet. D word, sorry. That means that you don't get the nutrition that you need because that's counterproductive. Okay, we still need to get those, lovely above ground vegetables. We want to get a little bit of carbohydrate. We want to get some good fiber. We want to get some good protein and healthy fats. Healthy fats like oily fish, like olive oil, like avocado, like nuts and seeds. These are things that you can sort of add in. If you're having a salad with your chicken and maybe some new potatoes, you want to make a nice dressing, put some seeds on there, a few nuts in the salad if you can. Just ways to add in to your food because the danger is if we're going and doing something extremely restrictive or because we're on medication, we're not hungry, we're not eating enough and we're not eating enough of the good stuff and we start, this is, you know, not a good thing for us. There are many consequences of starving the body and they're not good ones.
Brilliant. Thank you. Somebody just put a comment about their niece. I don't know if you're still here, being very overweight. She's under 16. So I would say we don't run webinars for children, and that's for a very good reason. There are some very good NHS approaches for supporting children who are overweight. So we would direct you there. But also the research around children and weight loss is that we have to be incredibly cautious and careful around our language with children and setting them up where we don't want them to be in the situation some of us are in now of decades of having to focus on their bodies and having a very negative self-image. So it's about healthy growth. And if you're a teenager and you are overweight, then actually there's a likelihood that you can go up in height and your weight will sort of reduce. The percentage of your body fat will reduce because you'll go higher in height. So yeah, it's a really got to be very cautious. Some of the sort of like basic healthy advice is suitable for everyone in the family. So our cool meal plan, the Mediterranean style of eating, we would really recommend that everyone, as much as possible, is following that type of approach to eating because it's just healthy for us. So that may be something to be thinking about, sort of role modeling in that way. I hope that's helpful. I think there's a couple more questions, but I think we're going to almost leave it there. We're just over 2 o'clock. So any last comments from you, Sam?
Um, I think we've had a really packed webinar, and thank you so much for your excellent questions and participation, lovely suggestions and reflections in the chat box as well. It was really appreciated. It makes it really interesting for us, and I think it really helps everyone else. I love that we
That sort of like
work,
support for one another as
yes,
well
we're
is
kind
so
of
important.
working together towards a common goal, which I think is powerful for each of us. So thank you for all being here, and hopefully we see you next Tuesday. Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. All right. And thanks to Tegan and Raman for being here and supporting us in the background too. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.